Title: The Architect of Silence. How to Win When No One Is Watching. Introduction: The Call to Solitude. Narrator: Imagine Morgan Freeman's voice. Listen carefully, not with your ears, but with the weary part of your soul. The world is a cacophony. It screams success. It screams urgency. It screams for validation. But tell me honestly, when was the last time you heard the quiet voice of your own soul? The world teaches you to chase the applause. But the truth, my friend, is that applause is a distraction. We are here to talk about a man named Elias. Was never meant to be a hero in the spotlight. He was an observer, a quiet genius, in a loud, demanding place. His narrative is not defined by what he built for the public eye, but by what he forged in absolute solitude and betrayal. Every genuine, life-altering transformation begins in a place you often try to escape: the wilderness of self. The moment you choose to lock the door on the noise of opinion of the critics, the judgment of the cynics, the crippling expectation of the masses. That is the very moment you begin to build your legacy. That is the moment you step into the role of the architect of silence, the betrayal of the blueprints. The first test: Elias carried a vision, not a comfortable fantasy, but a complete, intricate blueprint for a technology that would change the infrastructure of his time. He spent 7 years, their 7 years of sacrifices, while everyone else was celebrating. 7 years of no, I can't come. 7 years of, I have to work. The first great test of his character came from the man he revered, Mr. Thorne. Elias presented his life's work. Thorne, with that deceptive, patronizing smile, said Elias, "This is genius, truly. But it's too big, too soon. The market isn't ready. Scale it down, son." Elias, craving that recognition, agreed to scale it down. But Thorne had seen the future in those designs. Thorne didn't want him to scale it down. He wanted the whole idea. The very next fiscal quarter, Elias saw it on every news platform. The Thorne Foundation unveils a revolutionary technological breakthrough. His technology. His name was nowhere in the narrative. The betrayal was swift, quiet, and absolutely crushing. What did Elias do? He didn't rage. He didn't send lawyers. He went back to the emptiness of the garage. He looked at the dust collecting on his empty workbench, and the wisdom dawned on him. The person you trust the most is often the easiest one to exploit. The foundation of granite. Rebuilding the self. And here, my friend, is the critical pivot. When the world attempts to steal your creation, you have two inevitable choices. You either surrender and break, or you become unbreakable. Elias chose the latter. He stopped building the project. He started building the architect. The first law of the architect: you must never build a structure, a career, a business, a reputation that is taller than your internal discipline. He trained his mind to see the theft as a gift. It stripped away his need for external validation. It taught him to treat motivation as a temporary luxury, and discipline as the breath he needed to survive. That alarm wasn't an option. It was a non-negotiable contract with his future self. The daily commitment to learning was sacred. The quiet meditation forced him to incinerate the noise of resentment and regret. He finally understood that his biggest error wasn't the trust he placed in Thorne. It was making his self-worth dependent on external recognition. When you learn to truly build in silence, you don't build for the world's standing ovation. You build because it is the fundamental obligation of your soul. The mid-game. The price of invisible work. The weight of the almost, the test of perseverance. Narrator's voice. Reflective, recognizing the difficulty. Now, the foundation is set. Elias has chosen discipline over despair. But listen closely, because this is where 99% of people quit. They quit in the mid-game. The first wave of inspiration is gone. The anger at Mr. Thorne has cooled into a dull ache. Now comes the quiet, brutal phase. The monotony of excellence. 3 more years passed. 3 years of waking up at. But this time, the garage felt heavier. Why? Because the work was invisible. He was building. Not for Thorne, not for the market, but for himself. And nobody validates a man who is building a private kingdom. The whispers start again. The old friend calls. Elias, man, you're a genius, but you're wasting it. Come, join us. Get a real job. Stop playing in the dark. The bank statement screams, you are running out of time. The mirror reflects. You look tired. You are failing slower than before, but you are still failing. This is the weight of the almost, that period where you have given too much to turn back, but not enough to succeed. For Elias realized that the true test of character isn't how you handle a crisis. It's how you handle the slow, boring grind that follows the crisis. He learned a crucial truth. Failure is not the opposite of success. Delay is the opposite of success. The system wants you to delay. It wants you to slow down just enough for doubt to creep in and stop you completely. He fought delay with absolute ritualistic routine, the wisdom of the empty room, the power of non-reaction. One morning, exhausted, Elias found himself looking at the single photograph he kept in his garage, a picture of his old mentor, Mr. Thorne. Thorne was on stage, receiving an award for Elias's initial design. For a split second, the old poison the rage. The unfair narrator shifts tone slightly, more direct, instructional. And here is the lesson that separates the amateurs from the masters. The power of non-reaction. Elias could have spent that day focusing on Thorne. He could have channeled the rage into bitter energy. But rage is a temporary fuel, and it leaves you empty. Instead, he forced himself to do something counterintuitive. He analyzed Thorne's success. Thorne had taken his design, yes, but Thorne succeeded because he possessed access, capital, and belief. Elias realized, I cannot control what Thorne stole, but I can control what I build next. He closed his eyes and practiced the philosophy of the empty room. When you react to others, you give them the keys to your internal space. When you choose not to react, you reclaim your mind. You tell the external world, your chaos is not my problem. This wasn't forgiveness. This was strategic indifference. Elias was too busy building a machine that would render Thorne's stolen creation obsolete. His revenge wasn't loud. It was inevitable. Conclusion of the first spark. After 2 more years since the betrayal, Elias finally reached a milestone. A small, almost insignificant spark of success. A function of his new design worked perfectly. He didn't cheer. He didn't call anyone. He just breathed. He looked around the silent garage. The dust was still there. The emptiness was still there. But the silence no longer felt like a prison. It felt like the womb of creation. And this, my friend, is what we must take away from this section. Build your world so strong that what others do is irrelevant. Your journey isn't defined by the applause you seek, but by the quiet power you accumulate when the music stops. The unveiling, the true test of success. Narrator's voice. Building intensity. We left Elias in the silent garage. 5 years after the great betrayal, the work was functional. The creation was ready. But here is where the true test begins. Because building the product is one thing, launching it into the loud, judgmental world is another. Elias could have called a press conference. He could have screamed his victory from the rooftops. He could have directly challenged Mr. Thorne. But he had learned the greatest lesson in his solitude. The power of a quiet, undeniable truth. His team, a small group of fellow disillusioned engineers, he found, through quiet channels, them to market the product aggressively. Elias refused. He said, no, we will not use noise to fight noise. We will let the silence speak for itself. They launched the technology, not with a grand event, but with a simple, elegant presentation to the small, specialized community that Thorne had failed to serve. Elias did not mention Thorne's name once. He didn't speak of betrayal. He only spoke of the solution, the ripple effect, the collapse of the thief. Narrator's voice, slow, delivering the punchline. The world did not know who Elias was, but the world immediately understood the superiority of his technology. Thorne's stolen design, built on old shaky ground, simply could not compete with the 5 years of deep, undisturbed work Elias had fully. The market did the work for Elias. Companies began migrating to the new system. The thief, Mr. Thorne, saw his empire begin to crack. The irony was perfect. Thorne's own success, which Elias had made possible, now accelerated his collapse, because the world had developed a need for something better, and Elias had built the something better. Thorne tried to buy Elias out. Thorne offered millions. Elias simply sent back a one-line note. The price is not negotiable. silence. Elias realized the greatest revenge is building a table so high the people who betrayed you can no longer even see your chair. He wasn't interested in tearing Thorne down. He was too busy building his own sky. The final wisdom, the architect's legacy. Narrator's voice, philosophical, delivering the final message. So, what is the lesson of the architect of silence? It is this: your life is not a stage for others to critique. Your life is a workshop. The work that truly matters, the character, the discipline, the innovation, that work is always done in the unseen hours. Elias never sought the spotlight again. He became known as the quiet innovator. He built solutions for the sake of the solution, not the sensation. His happiness was rooted not in the applause he received, but in the fact that he was no longer capable of quitting. Remember this as you chase your own great ambition. Let the world chase the volume. You chase the depth. While others are busy explaining their potential, you be busy realizing it. Build your foundation so deep in the granite of your will that when the storms come, and they will come, the world will watch in awe as the loud things fall, and the architect of silence stands tall. The ultimate victory is not when you receive the award. The ultimate victory is when you no longer need it. Go. Now shut the door on the noise. Your work begins in the silence. The paradox of prosperity, when silence becomes the lure, the temptation of noise. 5 years had passed since the launch, and Elias was undeniably successful. His company, Quiet Solutions, was now the industry standard. But success brought a new, subtler challenge: the temptation to become the very thing he fought against. The media begged for interviews. Financial analysts wanted glossy stories. Marketing gurus urged him to embrace the spotlight. They promised Elias, "You need to share your secret sauce. You need to become a brand personality." Elias spent a week considering it. He looked at the chaos and fleeting attention that followed the loud personalities of his industry. He realized their fame was built on thin ice, constantly needing maintenance. His choice was a second, profound commitment to silence. He announced a simple, radical policy: the work will speak. I will not. My focus remains on improvement, not on visibility. The new discipline, the art of Elias introduced what he called the discipline of His sales team was instructed not to aggressively pitch the product, but simply to educate the potential clients on the problem and the solution. If our product is truly essential, Elias reasoned, the need will pull the client to us. We will not push. We will trust the merit of our creation more than the volume of our voice. This approach baffled the business world, yet it created a powerful magnetic effect. People began to trust Elias because he wasn't desperate for their attention or their money. His silent confidence became the greatest advertisement. He also learned that silence is a quality control mechanism. When you stop talking about yourself, you start truly listening to your work. Elias used the saved time and energy from public relations to double down on research and innovation, the shadow and the mentor. It was during this peak prosperity that Elias met Dr. Anya Sharma, a retired physicist known for her radical theories on efficiency. She was his mirror, a powerful mind who also embraced anonymity. Dr. Sharma challenged Elias. Success is easy to achieve, Elias. Significance is the true test. Are you building for your name or for the future? Do you need silence as a shield or as a tool? She taught him that silence must not be a reaction to past pain, Thorne, but a deliberate, proactive choice for future growth. Silence, she explained, is not the absence of sound. It is the presence of deep focus. Elias finally understood that his journey was not about defeating Thorne, but about perfecting his own philosophy. The betrayal was merely the pressure that forged the diamond. The weight of knowing, the burden of true value, the quiet partnership, and the innovation labs. Elias and Dr. Sharma formed a partnership rooted in mutual respect for quiet work. Their collaboration was known internally as the Labs of Negative Space. They focused not on what was being built, but on what was being deliberately left out. True innovation, Dr. Sharma often said, is not adding complexity. It is removing the unnecessary noise is merely unnecessary complexity. Their shared goal was to create technology so intuitive and so reliable that it became invisible. If the user had to think about the product, they had failed. If the product worked seamlessly and silently in the background, they had succeeded. Elias invested heavily in these labs, but the investment was quiet. No grand opening ceremonies, no press releases. They operated like a secret society of high achievers. They traded the applause of the crowd for the deep satisfaction of the craft. The media's assault and the unmoved rock. The outside world, particularly the media, grew frustrated with Elias's refusal to engage. They began to spin narratives. Is Elias hiding something? Is Quiet Solutions an isolated cult? Does Elias have social anxiety? They tried to force him into the open, using fear and speculation. They labeled his silence as arrogance. Elias used Dr. Sharma's analogy, be the immovable rock in the river of noise. He refused to defend himself. He knew that the moment he responded to the noise, he would validate the noise. His company's success, the undeniable effectiveness of his product, became his only spokesperson. He let the positive results drown out the negative speculation. He taught his team that integrity is the best defense. The hidden cost of noise. Elias began to study his competitors, the loud ones. He noticed a pattern. They spent more time promoting their future intentions than delivering their current product. Their energy was dissipated, spread thin across interviews, social media fights, and public displays. He realized that noise is expensive. It costs mental clarity, time, and focus. His competitors were paying this hidden cost, allowing their foundations to rot while they painted the exterior. Elias's team was fresher, sharper, and faster because they didn't waste time on performance. They only focused on substance. This was the ultimate competitive advantage, the economics of silence. The lesson for everyone watching. If someone is constantly screaming their worth, they are likely trying to convince themselves more than they are trying to convince you. Focus on the quiet ones. They are usually the ones building something real. The echo in the heart. Silence applied to life. A personal quietude. Elias's professional life was a fortress of quiet discipline, but true growth required applying that silence internally. He realized that the noise he filtered from the world, often replaced by the internal noise of worry, regret, and ambition. Dr. Sharma guided him. Elias, you built the perfect filter for your company. Now, build the perfect filter for your heart. Your focus is not just what you ignore, but what you allow to grow inside. He developed a personal ritual of deep listening, spending an hour each morning in complete, intentional silence, not for meditation, but for uninterrupted self-assessment. He would listen to his own doubts, not to suppress them, but to understand their source. This internal quietude made him a vastly superior leader. He was calm under pressure, and his decisions were rooted in clarity, not in the panic that drives most of his competitors. He taught that quiet confidence is the only kind that lasts. The encounter with the past. Mr. Thorne's shadow. Years later, Elias accidentally crossed paths with Mr. Thorne at a small industry charity event. Thorne, looking older and strained, was now struggling to keep his outdated company afloat. Thorne approached him, not with anger, but with a plea, hinting at the betrayal. Elias, if only I had known the value of what you were building back then. Elias listened, showing no emotion, no triumph. He simply replied, Mr. Thorne, the value was never in the blueprint. The value was in the time. You chose the quick, loud route. I chose the quiet, long path. That was the only difference. He offered no help, no forgiveness, but also held no malice. He simply acknowledged the truth and walked away. Elias understood that true closure is not a confrontation. It is indifference to the past. The final architecture of success. The ultimate lesson, Elias solidified. Success is not about how many people know your name. It is about how many people depend on your quality. He defined true mastery as the ability to achieve maximum impact with minimum fuss. His technology changed the lives of millions, yet he remained virtually unknown outside his specialized field. His legacy became an invisible power, the soundest foundation, the clearest signal, the most reliable system. The silence wasn't a punishment for the world. It was a gift of efficiency and peace he offered through his work. The message is clear. Stop explaining yourself. Stop justifying your process. Let your critics talk. Let your competitors boast. Your only job is to do the work with such quiet excellence that your results become the loudest sound in the room. The true currency. Investing in mental quiet. The financial discipline of silence. Elias achieved immense financial success, but he viewed money not as a score, but as a shield against noise. The money he earned bought him the ultimate luxury, the ability to say no to distracting opportunities. He realized that the loudest people in the market were often the ones who lacked financial discipline, constantly chasing the next hype cycle. Their need for attention stemmed from a need for quick, insecure wealth. Elias taught his team that true wealth is not the size of your bank account, but the size of your quiet time. He encouraged investing in assets that were stable and required minimal attention, freeing up mental energy for creative work. The goal of financial freedom, Elias stated, is not to buy loud things. It is to buy the undisturbed silence required to build things of lasting value. He mastered the art of working for value, not for validation. The difference between isolation and solitude. Critics often mistook Elias's silence for isolation or fear. Dr. Sharma helped him clarify this distinction for his employees. Isolation, a state of fear, where you hide from the world because you feel judged or unworthy. It is driven by avoidance. Solitude, a state of power, where you step away from the world to build your strength and clarity. It is driven by purpose. Elias's time alone was always solitude. He was not hiding. He was simply engaging in the necessary deep work that cannot be done in public. He used his private time not to relax, but to recharge his creative focus. The message was profound. Do not run from the world in fear. Step back from the world with intention. Build your strength in solitude, and return when your product, not your personality, is ready to speak. The legacy of the filter. The ultimate legacy of Elias was not his technology itself, but the filter he created for his life and his company. He filtered out short-term trends, loud criticism, and quick money schemes. He understood that every distraction you engage with, every piece of noise you respond to, is a tax on your creative genius. Elias's advice to the ambitious: before you start building your dream, spend a year building your filter. The quality of your work will always be determined by the quality of what you refuse to let in. Let the world rush by. You stand still and build. He became a symbol of lasting quality in a world obsessed with fleeting trends. The architect of silence proved that the highest quality output comes not from the loudest effort, but from the most focused and deliberate inaction against noise. The multiplication of quiet. Training the next generation. The culture of low volume. Elias realized that for his philosophy to endure, it couldn't just be about him. It had to be about the culture he instilled. He needed to multiply the quiet. He created a unique hiring process for quiet solutions. They didn't test for brilliance. In interviews, they tested for the capacity for sustained focus. They looked for candidates who valued the deep work over the public praise. The company meetings were famously silent. They started with a mandatory 5 minutes of quiet time to center everyone's focus. Decisions were made, not by the loudest voice, but by the most thoroughly researched data. Elias led by example. He never shouted. He never panicked. His presence was calm, steady, and demanding of excellence. He taught his managers the true cost of impatience is always error. Let your quiet clarity guide your team, not your anxiety. The loss of Dr. Sharma and the inner voice. A few years later, Dr. Sharma passed away peacefully. Her death was a moment of profound introspection. For Elias, she was his last, most trusted guide, the external voice that reinforced his internal commitment to solitude. In her honor, Elias did not create a statue or a loud memorial. Instead, he simply dedicated a new, silent wing of the innovation labs to her. He realized that her physical absence forced him to fully internalize her teachings. He no longer needed the mentor. The wisdom was now his own. He finally became his own architect of silence. The work became deeper, more personal, and less reliant on any external validation. The ultimate freedom from comparison. Elias achieved the ultimate psychological freedom. Freedom from comparison. He stopped measuring his success against Thorne or against any other loud personality in the industry. He understood that comparison is the thief of joy. But more importantly, comparison is the destroyer of original thought. If you are constantly looking sideways, you'll never see the unique path ahead of you. His final word to the new recruits summarized his life's journey. The moment you realize that your competition is not the person next to you, but the noise inside your own head, that is the moment you win. Seek to be better than your previous best self, and do it quietly. The final verdict of time. Legacy over fame. Years melted into decades. Thorne's aggressively loud empire, built on constant noise and quick fame, began to crack under its own weight. The high-volume, quick-win culture he championed led to widespread internal burnout and ultimately shallow, unsustainable innovation. Thorne remained famous, but his company was built on sand. Elias's quiet solutions never dominated the headlines, but their technology became the indispensable backbone of the entire global industry. They quietly evolved from a successful company to an institutional legend, a place where the deepest, most thoughtful work was done. The final symbolic moment came at a global innovation summit. Thorne, visibly strained and frantic from years of maintaining a constant, exhausting facade, gave a desperate, loud speech about his current, temporary market victories. Elias was next, not to speak about revenue, but to receive the Lifetime Achievement Award for impact on human focus. His entire speech was just 2 minutes long. He simply looked at the audience, the thousands of founders, leaders, and thinkers, and said, "In a world that screams for attention, the greatest achievement is to listen." The profound answers were always inside, hidden beneath the noise we created in our pursuit of validation. Stop selling, start building, and do it quietly. The industry realized the ultimate truth. Thorne taught them how to sell a story, but Elias taught them how to build a legacy. Noise is temporary, focused. Brilliance is eternal. The monument of stillness. A legacy that echoes. Elias's quiet success was not merely a business triumph. It was the birth of a global movement. Quiet Solutions became more than a company. It evolved into a global blueprint for sustainable human achievement. The firm's campuses were architectural marvels, designed not for flash, but for uninterrupted thought. They were vast, sprawling libraries of quietude, where every corner was built to honor focus. They had zero tolerance for distraction, understanding that attention, not time, is the most precious commodity. While other companies chased fleeting trends, Elias's firm was quietly rewriting the future. The philosophy, now referred to as the Quiet Way, began to influence institutions worldwide. Schools adopted silent hours to promote deep learning. Hospitals created focus zones for complex surgeries. Governments, tired of noisy, reactionary politics, began implementing systems that forced leaders to sit in silent deliberation before making irreversible decisions. Elias, the old architect, never stopped building. In his final years, he didn't write a memoir of his success. He established the foundation for quiet leadership. Its mission was simple: to fund projects that reduced societal noise and empowered the voices that were often drowned out, the voices of data, introspection, and empathy. His last public message, delivered not from a stage, but through a simple, handwritten note, summarized his life's work. The world does not need more volume. It needs more value. And value is only created in the stillness where true insight resides. The battle is over. The noise has lost. The only power that truly lasts is the quiet power you find within your own focused mind. Go and build your monument of stillness. The message was clear. The fight for silence is the fight for clarity. And the fight for clarity is the fight for a meaningful life. Elias's name faded into the background, just as he always wished. But his legacy, a world that had finally learned the immense, unstoppable power of deep, uninterrupted work, echoed forever. This is the ultimate freedom, to choose depth over popularity, substance over noise, and legacy over fame. Now, the story is yours. Go, Make your silence heard. The echo of the quiet generations of impact. The world Elias left behind was fundamentally different. The culture of noise had been dethroned, not by a revolution, but by a quiet, unwavering example. The quiet way was not just a methodology, it was a societal reset. The air felt clearer, decisions felt more thoughtful, and the stress levels, particularly among high achievers, had noticeably dropped. Elias's biggest legacy was the generations of thinkers he inspired. Young people, disillusioned by the frantic pace and superficiality of the Thorne era, found inspiration in the tale of the man who chose the hardest path. It's the path of internal truth. They learned that real confidence doesn't need to shout. It simply does the work. The Thorne paradox. Thorne's company eventually dissolved, a cautionary tale about building a brand without substance. In his final lonely interview, Thorne admitted, "I spent my life trying to prove to Elias that I was louder, but all I proved was that I was empty." He won because he wasn't playing the same game. He was building something that mattered, while I was only selling the idea of mattering. Elias's physical absence created a deeper presence. People often visited the silent wing of the innovation labs, not to mourn, but to seek clarity. They would sit in the same quiet corner where Elias once worked, searching for their own inner architect. They realized the final, powerful lesson. Elias never built a monument to himself, because he taught millions to build monuments within their own minds. The unfinished masterpiece. The story of Elias ends, but the philosophy is an ongoing, unfinished masterpiece. Every person who chooses thoughtful creation over loud consumption, every leader who chooses quiet, listening over quick, anxious answers, is adding a new chapter to his legacy. The journey taught us that true power is not in the crowd, but in the solitude. It's not about being heard by everyone. It's about making sure your one true voice is heard by you. The architect of silence has given you the blueprint. Now, go build your life on the solid foundation of focus and truth. Your quiet masterpiece awaits.